I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner, friend, colleague, Mr. Nick Hodge, who's also an investor and the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is, of course, the 206th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. It's getting bizarre, folks. We're going to talk about the markets. We're going to talk about what we're investing in. We're going to talk about Chinese balloons that maybe weren't Chinese balloons that were the size of buses. We're going to talk about the media and complicity as it relates to corporations and chemical spills. We're going to talk the markets. I'm going to give you my Patriot Battery Metals update as I do every week for those of you that just listen to me blabber for that reason. But before we do all that, we're going to ask Mr. Nick Hodge how he's doing, because I know you're not feeling the best, Nick. I'm sorry. Thank you for joining us this week. How are you holding up, man? Oh, God.
I got the cough, and I wasn't even in East Palestine, Ohio, Gerardo. I think just, the germs going around from the elementary school here as we get out of the end of winter. But it's a little bit cold. How are you feeling?
The usual allergies, puffy eye, runny nose, congested. I don't ever know anymore if it's allergies or if it's a cold or if it's a virus. I'm just happy to be here.
Or if it's the Rona, we don't even get tested anymore. Who knows?
Who cares? It is what it is, right? The aliens are here, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We'll get into the UFOs. I want to get your take on that. It's a fascinating story to me. We touched on it a little bit last week, and then it escalated, and, again, we'll get into it, but a lot of interesting stuff going on in the market. So let's start with the overall indices. I always defer to you because I don't dabble in the blue chips. That's definitely not my cup of tea. It's not my expertise. What are you seeing out there? More of the same?
Well, I was starting to feel a little bit of FOMO, Gerardo. The stock market took off like a bat out of hell to start the year, and the bulls are taking victory laps already. Like the bear market is over, and I was starting to think that I had missed out on something, and then over the past 2 weeks or whatever, for the duration of February so far, the indexes have turned back around. Earnings are coming back into play. That inverted yield curve just will not go away, and in fact continues to get more staunchly or steeply inverted, almost down to 900 basis points or something like that. 90 basis points,
90,
almost a full percentage point inverted, and I think things are gonna turn back around to the bear market side here. Earnings growth continues to be negative. Almost all the S&P 500 companies reporting, I think earnings growth is negative 2% or something like that. And the bulls, I think, just, prematurely celebrated, sort of like that Dodge Ram EV commercial, premature electrification.
69 yield curves with premature electrification. So many childish jokes. I'm going to save those for later on in this podcast.
It's easy to feel like you're missing out, though. So sorry, there have been some decent economic data. We talked about the jobs number recently. Mm-hmm. Retail sales came out really strong. But it's in core things where people have to spend more money, right? Yep. Like food prices are up. Of course, you're spending more money on food. If you look at the discretionary parts of things, people are not increasing their spending. And then if you look at and I mentioned this before, the credit cards, people are really strapped out there. You can see that they're maxing out their credit cards and they're not paying their monthly balances like they used to. So the consumer's getting tapped out. They don't all own Patriot Battery Metals, I suppose.
They don't all own Patriot Battery Metals. And you know what? A lot of companies that are going to need a Patriot Battery Metals also don't own a Patriot Battery Metals. And look, let's get right into that part. We had about 6 or 7 trading days where the shorts really put it to Patriot. But if you look at a 1-year chart, it's just what happens with this stock. It's going to rally 100, 150%. It's going to pull back 30 to 40%. And then you're going to get the next set of numbers, right? And so let's get to the last 2 news releases. The last one that, some people poked at because I don't think they understand, one, that CV13 isn't CV5. I don't think they understand it's 2 separate pegmatite clusters that are kilometers apart, and that CV13 is likely to be a satellite feeder deposit, right? It's high grade, it's near surface, it's very continuous. The numbers are great. It was the headline number was 22.6 meters at 1.56 lithium oxide. That included 6 meters of 3.19. 10 of the first 14 holes hit. Substantial mineralization. If any other company would have put those results out, and wasn't accustomed to Patriot Battery Metal type results, the stock would have surged, right? And instead, I think there's a lot of misinformed people that said, oh, 10 out of 14 holes hit. Well, that's not what we're used to from CV5, so maybe the mineralization is thinning. We're also not used to just 22 or 24 or 18 or 17 meters of mineralization. We're used to 60, 70, 80, 120, 130, right? Folks, these are two separate pegmatite clusters. Now, look, I told you before, I'm a simple guy with a simple premise. I think underneath, all this stuff may connect. I think it's one big blob. I think we're going to get to that sooner rather than later. The company's already alluded to it. And that brings me to my next point. It's the news release before the most recent one. Is the February 5th one that I want to read, and I want anybody who tunes into this just for the Patriot Battery Metals take to really go back and read what the company told you. On February 5th, the company updated how the 2023 program was going, and what it told you is that it extended the strike length of CV5 by 400 meters in the first set of holes. Now, let's get to the really important paragraph. Drill holes 105 and 106 were colored immediately on strike eastwardly of the high-grade Nova Zone. The high-grade Nova Zone, of course, the one that's returning those freakish grades, long runs of 5% on lithium oxide. It continues. In hole 93, at a distance of approximately 90 meters and 200 meters, respectively, and returned near continuous pegmatite intersections of approximately 84 and 132 meters. The company is telling you that they're chasing this high-grade Nova Zone, that they've stepped out 90 meters and 200 meters, and that the first two holes are hitting pegmatite at an 84-meter length and 132-meter core length. Now, maybe all of that doesn't have lithium spodumene, lithium oxide, but I can tell you if history is any guide, and it seems to rhyme often with Patriot, the bulk of that core, the bulk of that 84 and 132 meters, east of this Nova Zone and extension, is going to be likely high grade and likely mineralized. So I think people miss that. They went on and continued to tell you about the other two holes. They said the pegmatite continued to be intersected in drill hole 107 and 108, another 100 meters and 200 meters. So now we have the 400 meter step out to the east, right? A long strike with widths of approximately 65 meters and 54 meters respectively. So you now have 84 meters, 132 meters, 65 meters, and 54 meters in this high-grade Nova Zone, or the extension of the high-grade Nova Zone. If those grades are anything like the last release from the Nova Zone, and these widths hold up the way that they've held up in the past, you are going to see one of the most epic short squeezes that I think we've seen in quite some time. And look, I think it's starting to play out already, right? The last part is critical in that release. It said it is interpreted that the CV5 pegmatite may extend under the relatively thin glacial till cover towards CV13, which again is 4.3 kilometers to the west-southwest, and is anticipated to be drill tested during the 2023 drill campaign. The company is straight up telling you people that they think it all connects underneath. And this is the first time they've been as explicit about it. And if you have 4.3 kilometers, 5 kilometers of strike length, and it's all one big blob as my simple brain tends to process it, and this high-grade zone where, by the way, there's at least 4 and maybe 5 drill rigs now, aggressively extending that out. They're not doing 20-meter info holes over there, Nick. It's 80-meter, 90-meter, 100-meter, and 200-meter step-outs, right? In the first four holes, they've stepped out a total of 400 meters. They've already finished 8 as of the last release. They're drilling really fast from what I understand, so you can use your imagination. And we have 5, if it all ties in together, and this high-grade zone continues, and these widths and those kind of grades from the Nova Zone hold up, it's about to get really, really fun, and which is why I still own 98% of my position. And as I told you before, I sold 2% because I had some tax bills and some priorities and responsibilities that we had to take, but it's going to be sink or swim on this one for me. It just is what it is. I think it's a generational discovery. Albemarle just had results. The results were absolutely phenomenal. They increased their prices. They expect to increase their prices by 55%, right? And the results that came in were after a 300% increase in what Albemarle charges for its lithium. And they're saying we're going to increase it another 55%. It doesn't matter. It posted net income of $1.13 billion. $1.13 billion. That was a quarter. Their sales jumped 5-fold despite the price hike. It's not just this company that needs the lithium. It's not just this company with healthy balance sheets. It's not just Australian funds that want a 19.9% stake. And it's not just Pilbara that's got the pockets and the expertise to come out and take this at a significant premium. And I can tell anybody that's writing in saying, is it going to happen at 20? Does it happen at 25? It's not going to happen anywhere near those levels if my information is anywhere near correct. And again, that's why I'm holding my 98% as long as I can.
Well done. What's the return from $20 to from 16 cents?
It's a lot. 12,000% or something like that. And again, look, if we were bought out tomorrow for $24, I wouldn't be heartbroken, but I'd be disappointed. I'm pretty confident in what's here. This is such a special set of deposits, such a special district. And, kudos to Blair and Ken and the team at Patriot for being really aggressive about the drilling and really making it a point to step out aggressively. I think they know they're on the clock, right? I think they understand now that they're going to have multiple suitors, and I think that they're wise to prove up as much as they can prove up in as short a time as they can. And again, kudos to them for making that pivot and getting the company in position where it's cashed up to be able to do the kind of aggressive drilling that they're doing. But anybody that's short, hey, more power to you. You have a bigger set than I do. I'm on the other side of that. We're going to see how it all works out when it's all said and done.
Why do you think, I had a couple of questions. It's not like global news. I don't know if you saw in the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of headlines about this, lithium deposit they found in India, for example, 5.9 million tons of lithium. That makes the rounds. That goes around the globe. It's in, all the big publications. The Bloombergs are writing about it, splashy, headlines and things like that. Why does that get so much attention? And why isn't like the Corvette property on the front and the homepage of Bloomberg?
That's a great question, but I'm actually glad that's the case because that's what allowed us to, hone in on this really early, right? And obviously, nobody could have predicted it was going to turn out the way it's turning out, but I think that's coming. I think we've started to see the Australian press, that article that came out about MinRes coming in wanting 19.9%. That wasn't like a paid article. That wasn't something that, the company reached out and said, hey, can you write this piece on? Or someone behind the scenes said, no, that was a reputable source there that somehow got a tip from somebody and pretty high up and then kind of spilled the beans, right? And I think that's why we had that like this last little short pullback. I think it's the last one until we cross the $20 mark. That's kind of my call here for the next couple of weeks. And I think the east side there on the Nova Zone is going to be the catalyst. But I don't have a good answer to your question, Nick. I think the media is coming. I think this is so massive. This is one of those just beyond the imagination type of plays and returns that I can see a lot of people wonder, like, this thing was 16 cents. Like, is this real? Really? It touched the high of 1750. Really? People think it's going to 40 or 50. It just sounds, again, if you use the starting point, the 16 cents, and you just see the run up, yeah, I'd be inclined to take profits too if I wasn't informed as to what I think is there and what that's worth in this market, right? What that's worth to an Albemarle, what that's worth to a Pilbara, what's that worth to other companies. It's not $20 a share and it's not 25, so it doesn't matter what Nick and Gerardo or you got into it at. The only thing that really matters from this point moving forward is what someone's willing to pay for it. And there's going to be multiple someones, and they are all cashed up. They are all cashed up. And look, we had news out of Australia. There was delays on a refinery, right? A processing plant. 6-month delays, CapEx blowouts in China. I heard, what's her name? Kathy Wood from ARC Fund. Is that her name?
Uh-huh.
She had a tweet that literally made me laugh out loud. I almost spilled out my glass of wine I was drinking. It was later at night. And it was a Friday, and I was being a geek looking at Twitter at Lithium News. And she tweeted something about how, she's modeling that in 2026 there's going to be a supply glut. And I almost spilt my wine out because, like, lady, like, there comes a point where you should just sit back and just kind of like be quiet, or at least stick to your knitting. And guess what? No shade to her. We all get on cold runs. We all get on hot runs. But she hasn't exactly been like on the right side of things for the last 12 months.
Sure.
As it relates to her own knitting. So you can speak on what you want to speak on, but I think in 2026, you're going to have some pie on your face, lady. And I think by 2020, 2026 seems like so far away from now, because I don't think a Patriot makes it out of this year. And frankly, I wish that wasn't the case. I wish they had another year and a half to really, really go do that exploration drilling across the entire 50-kilometer trend. I think, probably 30 kilometers of that trend is going to have to be drilled out by someone else, and who knows what else exists there. But this year's going to be an absolute blast, and the pullbacks are just, it's almost like a game at this point. It's like, all right, how many days are going to last? The average retracement, for those keeping track, in 2022 up until now is roughly 40%. So anytime it gets close to that, I'm like, maybe I'll nibble a little bit again, all right? And kind of get in there. And it always overshoots for a day, and sure enough, it does what it did today on, February the 16th, started turning back around with a vengeance, right up 11-12%. And I think by the time y'all read this, we might have some news out of that Nova Zone, and if not, it's imminent.
Glad I bought some in the open market in my IRA, tax-free Patriot Battery Metal gains.
Yeah, I didn't do that. Old Uncle Sam's gonna get me.
Well, me too, for the private placement. But anyway, back to the Indian thing. So this is something I wanted to talk about in this podcast. That was a splashy headline number, right? They got a nice chart in this Quartz article I'm looking at. Now that India has more lithium reserves than the USA, and they don't really get into, there's like one sentence that says, however, it's going to take years to bring this online, right? And that's like the thing, right? That's the thing that should be more dwelled upon in the article. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit. So I think the world is understanding that they need much more of these metals. I mean, and look at the car commercials in the Super Bowl, for example. There was multiple different brands that were advertising their EVs coming soon. And the world now understands that they need these things. So in India, lithium in India wasn't the only one we've seen recently. You'll remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a giant rare earths discovery in Sweden, right? that was making the rounds. And even locally here in Washington, there was a company that you and I are familiar with, Calibre,
yep.
which, it did some drilling and it calculated a resource for this project that they have here. And, what the newspapers did is they took the amount of ounces in the ground, multiplied it times the gold price. And that's like the headline, right, on the article. So, my neighbors texted me, did you hear about this big gold thing in Washington? Our customer service agent who lives here in Spokane was slacking the other day about, Nick, did you hear about this thing in Washington? And it's these big headlines, these big numbers, right? The $2 billion gold deposit found or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but what does that mean? And that's sort of, where you and I come in as far as, how can you profit from it personally? So let me take them one by one for a second. Like, I talked to Mark Saxon and he listens to this podcast. So shout out to him. And he was saying that that's not like really a new discovery. It's part of an iron ore discovery or an iron ore project in Sweden that's been known for a long time. And it might never come out of the ground because, first you've got to make sure that iron ore discovery is economic. You've got to mine out all that iron ore before you even get down to the rare earths, right? So when is that really going to make it to market, if ever? And in the case of the India thing, it's like, okay, well, they just put together this resource. They don't have any, processing, lithium processing capabilities. Where's that going to go? They're going to have to make all those agreements, fund the project. I've said this a bunch, right? Like,
yeah.
I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she was born obviously 7 years ago when Perpetua started their permitting process, and that's a critical source of antimony, a large one at that, and it still hasn't been approved. So the headlines are one thing, but the reality is another. And we can talk about the balloons and the chemicals later. That applies, right? The headlines are one thing.
Yeah.
The reality is another thing. In the case of that, gold deposit here in Washington, well, look, Calibre's got a producing mine in Nicaragua. They've got a producing mine in Nevada, the Pan mine, which they acquired from Fiore, I believe it was, which acquired it from a company called GRP that I raised $1 million for like 8 years ago, right? This isn't a new project, right? So how long ago was that they knew that this Eagle mine here in Washington, had a gold deposit? It's not going to be brought online anytime soon. And so I say all that to say, headlines are one thing, and again, reality is another. So careful reading some of these things and thinking that, India is going to come solve our supply woes for lithium. And then as it relates to Patriot, it is a difficult story to put together. I mean, there's not a resource on it. They've only really drilled a little bit relative to the size of the potential district and how many pegmatite clusters there are there. And people don't like to do the hard work, right? It's easy to click the share button on an article about a massive lithium discovery in India, but it's harder to put together the numbers on initial drilling results from pegmatite clusters. So anyway, I just think all these articles are interesting, but I do think that it means we're going in the right direction, right? It means that people realize we need these metals. They're starting to wonder where they're going to come from. They're taking interest. I mean, there's a lot of different articles that I've seen. I've seen one about that make the rounds, right? That like get promoted in Bloomberg newsletters and stuff, like Neo Materials building this magnet facility in Estonia, for example. Pretty big article on Bloomberg recently. Like, good that people are taking the interest. And I say all that to say that it's still very early, right? Like, we're nowhere close to solving this lithium shortage. We're nowhere close to solving the Chinese, quasi-monopoly on rare earth refining. Like, there's still a long way to go if you want those electric vehicles that were advertised in the Super Bowl, which, by the way, aren't being sold, many of them, until like 2024. If you read like the disclaimers at the bottom of those commercials, it's like available fall 2024, right? And they themselves still have some problems to work out. I think you put something about the automakers on there. Like, Ford just halted production of their Ford Lightning, right? Because they had the battery fire. Tesla had to recall, I think, 360,000 vehicles today because of their autopilot feature. And so for me, and I think for you, like, that's not the way to play it, even though I know you have a Tesla. So I don't think you're a big Tesla shareholder.
Look, it's the lithium companies and the mining companies that bought that Tesla, right? They love the car, awesome car, funnest car I've ever had. I got all sorts of little gadgets and toys in there. It's fun. I didn't buy it with Ford stock that I sold. I can promise you that much. And to that end, that was my point about what we've been preaching on this podcast for I don't know how long. Why risk your capital with the companies that are seeing decreased demand, can't execute on their business model, can't secure enough supply to produce the things they say they want to produce? Why not just go straight to the companies that are producing the stuff that is in need? Companies like an Albemarle, if you want to major and you want it to be liquid, that tell you, hey, we hiked our prices 300% in the last little bit. Didn't matter. Our sales jumped fivefold. Guess what? We're going to hike it another 55%. Okay. That seems like a very sustainable business model to me when everybody wants what you have. And again, it's supply and demand, folks. It's supply and demand. How you show me another Corvette district and let's have a conversation. I didn't even mention back to Patriot. I talked about the east side. I talked about CV5 and CV13, that 4 or 5 kilometer trend. The company in that same release said, oh, and by the way, out to the west, we think CV4 and this other pegmatite cluster, or these other pegmatite clusters might all connect. And if that's the case, that's 15 kilometers. Those numbers are stupid. I don't even want to think about those numbers because I already am having, a fun enough time with the numbers I have in my head for what the buyout may come at sometime this year. That's fun for me. If they hurry up and connect all of it, it's going to be funner than it already has been. And again, how many of those can you buy if you're a major mining company, a chemicals company, a vehicle, an automaker? There's not a lot of Corvettes laid around. And by the time it's all said and done, I think we were early to the biggest lithium discovery in the world, Nick.
You have to start going around and saying West Side.
This is all for entertainment purposes, folks. No, look, it's good time for not just Patriot, right? We made a lithium pick in one of our paid letters here a month and a half ago. We're up, I think, like 150% on that, and as much as 200% in the last couple of weeks. Help finance that at 10 cents, writing another check at 50 cents, hit a high at 115. I think it pulled back to 85 or 90 cents today. Those of you following Patriot could probably figure that one out. We're financing another company with a gentleman that's related to the company, and that's an interesting one that I won't share yet because that's for paid subscribers right now. But there's a lot of money out there to be made, guys. And look, you get hot hands, you get cold hands, and all things change. But right now, there's a lot of good deal flow. There's a lot of quality deals to be had. And I think for you and for me, Nick, the pace of quality deals is picking up. I know we were really gun shy at the end of last year at offering deals to our subscribers because you don't pay us to offer you deals just for the sake of offering you deals. You pay us to vet deals that have a good, legitimate shot at making you some good money. And, we feel a responsibility in that. If that means the deal flow dries up for 2 months because I don't like anything, then the deal flow is going to dry up for 2 months. And then you get a week like this week where it's like, hey, I got a new, different, unique idea that we both offered up to our services. And there's a uranium one popping out tomorrow that I really like. And probably a couple other ones here before the month's out. So we eat our own cooking, folks. And, that's all we can do. Get out here, give you free advice, take it, leave it, do some due diligence. At the end of the day, they're your profits and your losses. So you got to do the homework on it. We just try to provide, some rants and some ratings and tell you what we like and what's working for us. And so far, so good.
Somebody listens because there was a gentleman who wrote in after last week's podcast to customer service asking about just that, our deal flow, the size of the allocation. I mean, he was a serious investor. And so someone's out there listening.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the comments, the nice ones, the not so nice ones. I appreciate y'all writing in. Have fun with it, folks. This is one of those years where, look, things have really gone really well for the most part. 2022 for the most part was a great year, and on the market side, and 2023 is off to just a fucking barn burner of a year. So things should be fun this year. Make some money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk copper real quick. We talk metals. Copper looks sexy.
Oh, let me look. I haven't actually looked.
Holding firmly above 4. Stubbornly above 4.
Yeah, and it's interesting because let me just type it in. HG is the copper futures. It's interesting because the overall CRV commodity indexes has softened up a bit. Oh yeah, look at that. It's had a good little run here in the
getting its mojo.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, the dollar has been strengthening and even the 10-year has been strengthening. So, that's what's kept, gold went down further than I thought it was going to go. I was saying last week I was getting bullish on gold, but yeah, copper jumping up to 412 there is interesting. Sorry, I'm doing real pop darting.
No. That's what we do. Markets move all day and night, right? That's what at the end of the day, that's what folks pay us to do. And in the case of this podcast, that's what folks tune in to hear is the free rantings and ravings. And, I got to ask you about Bitcoin here in a second, because Bitcoin's putting in a good little performance. So we'll talk about whether or not you think that's a head fake or not in the next little bit. But your thoughts on copper, sir?
Well, look, the CRV commodity index is down 8% in the past 6 months. Meanwhile, copper's up 12% in the same amount of time. So it's diverged from that overall CRV commodity index. If it's me asking questions, I wonder what that means for the broader economy, right? Because you're getting conflicting signals, right? If you're getting this inverted yield curve that's, saying a recession is here, why is copper going up so much? And, I don't know if that has to do with the economy itself or it has to do just with the overall, structural deficit that exists in the copper market. I've been trying to get through this speech that Robert Friedland gave a couple of months ago at there's a conference in Saudi Arabia. And
did you bring your telescope so you could see how high the copper price was going to go in the next 5 years?
He's got some great lines, doesn't he?
That guy can talk, man. Guy can talk.
You know what he's done? He was, I hate to call it pandering, but he was basically pandering to the Saudis, talking about Allah and how Allah bestowed all this mineral wealth on their country, basically Saudi Arabia. He gave them all the oil, and he's also given them all these mineral assets, and anyway, he was sort of pandering, but it's because he's got a partnership now with Ma'aden, I think it's called, to look for metals in Saudi Arabia, and so he knows what he's got to do. But anyway, we need so much copper, right? No one really realizes it. I think half the world's largest copper mines were discovered like over a century ago, right? So now we're looking at new ways to leach things, and basically we're running out of high quality copper deposits, and everything applies to copper that I was saying earlier about rare earths and lithium, right? Mines take a long time to permit, fund, approve, etc. And so anyway, rambling a little bit, but yeah, I
hear he likes lithium.
Oh, does he? What's up with that?
Just I hear things, I don't know.
Oh, like Ivanhoe?
I just heard.
Does he like lithium in Quebec?
I just heard he likes lithium.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I don't really know why copper's doing what it's doing in the macro sense. I wonder if it has to do with the individual, again, supply and demand of copper itself.
Well, look, we know there's been some supply disruptions out of Peru with the unrest there. We know, some of the bigger mines globally were shut down for an indefinite period of time and now back online. But still, again, the price is stubbornly holding. And I think, again, when we talk about declining ore grades, the lack of new discoveries, the lack of funding for quality exploration, the amount of time it takes to permit a mine and bring it online, and then you add geopolitical instability, why am I risking my money buying Meta or Facebook or whatever the heck, they want to call themselves nowadays? I don't keep up with those stocks. Why would I bother hoping Mark Zuckerberg executes when I could be over here on this side just kind of watching everything play out the way it's laid out? I mean, again, these aren't 1 year bull markets, folks. These are takes 5, 10, 15 years to build and permit a mine, let alone discover, build and permit a mine. And then you got to hope everything goes well. We know exactly how much supply there is. We can project almost how much demand is going to come. The surprise is going to come to the upside. And on the supply side, the surprise is going to come to the downside in terms of probably less coming online than expected because of geopolitical disruptions, right? I think, that ties in well to our balloon story, which, if you believe the government, which I never do, right? And I have a conspiracy theory I'll share with you all about why this is all happening, right? I shared it with my kids yesterday. I told them, hey, get at me in 10 years, see if your papa's crazy. But I digress. Back to my original point.
I want to hear it. We'll get to it in a second.
Yeah, we'll get to it in a second. So you had all these unidentified flying objects. 3 of them were said to have surveillance equipment. Initially, they said it was China. Then China got one over their airspace, and they're like, well, sure in the fuck isn't us flying fucking balloons at, twice the height that an F-15 can fly. So what's going on? And then we had one in Montana. Then they shot one down in Alaska. It's been like 8 of these things now. They asked the senator that is on the oversight committee for national security. They asked him what he would tell the citizenry to do. He said he'd tell them to lock their door. Like, if it's alien, what the fuck is locking the door going to do for you, dumbass? This is the state of your political class right now, folks. Yours and mine, and I don't even know what party the guy is with. It was just a stupid thing to say. So you want to hear my crazy conspiracy theory? I think we have... If you don't like conspiracy theory, folks, turn it off. I think the world governments are so far in debt, and they're realizing that with interest rates where they are, that if they're going to have a really hard time servicing that debt. And I think they all got together at the recent World Economic Forum and decided that they're going to unleash onto the world a fake alien threat and then unleash onto the world a unified global front and alien budget. But unfortunately, because the threat is so massive and the funding required for all the major nations to get together to fight this threat, it's so massive that we're going to have to reset the entire financial system. But it's not our fault. It's the fucking aliens, guys.
And
holler at me in 10 years.
Extraterrestrial. No, it's interesting. I mean, I've just been basically viewing it as a distraction because they're not telling you anything. Yeah, I was watching Meet the Press, and there was a congressman on there who was on whatever committee he was on, so-called Group of 8. You're supposed to know these things. And he's like, look, they're not telling me anything. We got briefed on the balloon. We haven't been briefed on these things that were over Michigan and Canada. And by the way, they're different, like a floating octagon, no visible source of propulsion. Like, what the hell is that? And then they come out and said recently, and I haven't been following it too closely because it's noise, and I try to tune that out. But you can't help but absorb some of it. They were saying these could be commercial things, right, that were put up by whoever, the SpaceX's or the Blue Origins of the world. But nonetheless, they're still not telling you like what they were. Now, like you said, we come to find out the balloon might not have been from China, and so basically they're not telling you jack, right? And
they say they don't have propulsion systems that, would allow for it levitating. They're all flying over like restricted airspace. Like, that's a coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And, anyway, I could tell you some of the random things I've seen. Like the one was a balloon, right? And we used a Sidewinder missile to shut it down. I think that was at a cost of like $600,000 or something for one missile, I believe I read. I could be off on that, so excuse me. But either way, it was a couple $100,000. Like, it was a balloon. Why couldn't you use a bullet? Is what the guy was saying. And this was a guy who had some military expertise. Like, these fighter jets have guns. They could have just like shot the balloon with. They could have used like the multi-$100,000 missile, right? I guess if you got it, flaunt it. But back to your conspiracy theory, the distraction for sure. I've even seen some memes about 2020 was COVID, and then there was they're using these different distractions to distract you, which is why I try not to get distracted.
Same. It's going to be a fun, turbulent decade, y'all, and hopefully we're here for the bulk of it.
Speaking of which, Neil Howe's new book, I believe, is available for pre-order. We should call that out. He's the gentleman who wrote The Fourth Turning. And so his latest installment of, The Fourth Turning is happening now is available for pre-order. So one you should probably check out if you want book recommendations from Bizarro World.
I love that. Excited, have all the time in the world for Neil Howell's research, his work. Obviously, big subscriber to The Fourth Turning philosophy, and really excited for this latest piece of work. Nick, that's all I have in my ranting and raving bag of tricks today. Is there anything that you absolutely want to get off your chest that we haven't already covered?
I haven't told you about the hand washing yet.
Oh, we got to talk about the $15 hand wash class. Yes.
I was reading this article and I just couldn't believe that it was true, but it is. If you're a restaurant worker in the U.S., when you get hired, I guess they make you take this essentially a hand washing class. It's a sanitary class, how to be sanitary around while you're handling food, and it costs money, $15 to take this class to tell you how to wash your hands, and it comes out of your paycheck. So if you just got hired for whatever, $14 an hour, $15 an hour, that first hour you work, that $15 is going to pay for this class that you got to take to show you how to wash your hands. And let me pull up the article so I get the details exactly right. I have it up in a tab, one of my hundreds of tabs here somewhere.
If I'm not outraged by this, folks, it's because Nick and I talked about this last week, because we meant to get to this last week. And last week I was absolutely bothered by what looks like very low level, non-threatening, not Mexico style extortion, but extortion nonetheless.
Right. So guess where and I can't find the damn tab, of course. But anyway, the $15 goes towards this National Restaurant Association, who is the main lobbyist against increasing the minimum wage and keeping the wages for restaurant workers low. So they're mandated to take this course to pay for it themselves. And the proceeds of the course go to work against them, making more money. I'm a long believer that, government and industry colludes. We go all the way back to Supreme Court decisions that defines the corporations as people. We talk a lot about, lobbyists and things like that. But this story really drives home how they work against people to essentially suppress them from, upward mobility and things like that, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Before we leave, I did have something else to get off my chest. And you talked about how the powers that be collude against the people. And I wanted to bring up the Palestine, Ohio story because it speaks to that, right? Any amount of stupidity gets front page headlines from all the major news outlets for weeks on end, right? This train derailment, which poisoned the air, the ground, has got animals dying, has people choking, getting sick in the emergency room, all the things, right? All the things has barely gotten covered on the national stage. And it is beyond me why, if the air in Ohio, a week or so later, however long it's happened on the 7th, today's the 16th, still smells like chemicals and smoke, and people are getting sick and animals are dying. Why isn't every major news outlet set up with cameras there the way they're set up when, I don't know, A person divorces B person, or there's a trial for whatever stupid thing we decide we want to pay attention to that month? Like, you know why? Because the chemical companies that fund the media outlets aren't going to get in there and show up their masters. And I think, it speaks to, it's not just politicians and pharmaceutical companies that have lobbyists and politicians in their pocket. It's just deep-pocketed money in every industry, whether you're talking about gun lobbyists, defense industry, you're talking about, chemical companies, you're talking about pharmaceutical companies. That's why this isn't a bigger deal. We talked before about Purdue and, the opioid crisis and how they were able to literally bribe their way out of any criminal jail time. They were criminally negligent, but didn't have to admit that they were actually guilty of anything. They paid a fine that was a fraction of the money that they made selling and peddling this stuff to all of America in a very targeted and specific way. Nobody went to prison over that in any meaningful way. The people that were really responsible sure in the hell didn't go to prison. But hey, let's designate Mexican cartels as terrorist groups because they're on the border and they're sending fentanyl. And hey, I don't like fentanyl dealers as much as anyone else doesn't like fentanyl dealers. And I have my issues with other parts of that comment that I won't get into right now. But there's a better way to do things. But anybody that thinks that the government's way of doing things is for the people, you should reassess, because neither side is here for you folks.
Sure, the food water crisis is another great example.
Yeah. So anyway, I had to get that one off my chest. It tied in well with kind of where you went with that, and I think I feel much better after a therapy session now, Nick.
Good, $110.
I like it. It's 170 is what I heard now.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're neither here nor there. I'm supposed to tell you folks that you should absolutely go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe to never miss out on our updates and market commentary. Leave a comment, write in, folks. We try to get back to as many people as we can. And if we don't address it directly in an email, we always try to address things here in the podcast. This was good for me, Nick. I appreciate your time. I hope you get better. You want to send us off?
I appreciate it. No, hope everybody has a good week. We'll see you.
This was number 206. Have a good one, y'all.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.